Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. 4 years ago, Indian and Chinese troops had a first clash on the north bank of Pangangso. Since then, the military standoff in eastern Ladakh along the line of actual control has consumed many hours on YouTube and television channels and reams of articles and analysis on what went wrong, why did it happen, and where are we after that. So 4 years later, it's time to look back and also look forward on what is the situation on the eastern Ladakh border as well as India's relationship with China. And to do that, we thought of having a special program, this roundtable of experts on China, those who specialize in watching China, India-China relations, as well as the strategic fallout of what has happened over the past 4 years. So let me first introduce my guest and then my co-host and my colleague, Surya Gangadharan. To my left, Mr. Jayadeva Ranade, familiar face on StratNews Global as well as Bharat Shakti, China specialist, also president of the China Center for Analysis and Strategy, or CCAS. To my right, Sriparna Pathak, who's he teaches Chinese and studies China in OP Jindal University, or it's called Global University, OP Jindal Global University. To her right, Srikanth Kondapalli, again Professor of China Studies in Jawaharlal Nehru University. And to Surya's left, Surya is my colleague who's going to be my co-host. And to his right is Lieutenant Rakesh Sharma, former Corps Commander of 14 Corps, which is now in the thick of the standoff with China. Also, someone who writes regularly and analyzes the situation, India-China relations, and also forecasts what's going to happen further. Welcome all of you. And Surya, over to you as far as the question is concerned, the first question you wanted.
Okay, thanks Nitin. My first question to Jayadeva Ranade. Are we any closer to determining why China did what it did 4 years ago and what has it achieved?
Well, about being any closer at the government level, I wouldn't know. But I think China did decide on teaching us a lesson. I still look at it from a broader perspective. It was not confined to any particular tactical gain that they expected. It was to teach us a lesson. And they made their moves. I think it was a rapid counter build-up by us which blocked them. But the fact that there has been no easing of tension, there has been no indication of a will to ease tensions by Beijing, and there has been consistent build-up of military strength and border infrastructure on the Chinese side, indicates to my mind that what we are seeing is a long-term situation. And if I may just say that I think they are also preparing for maybe another attempt at a later date because they have heavy investments in the western side in terms of the CPEC, etc. They've got heavy investments being made in Ningchir, which is across Arunachal Pradesh. So I don't see tensions easing off, and I do expect there may be some more incidents in future.
You said teach us a lesson. For what?
Well, they think that we were rising very rapidly. We were trying to raise our international profile. We were, I can share that they were upset that we were trying for NSG, etc. And that was a point some of them made in private conversation, that you should understand that you cannot hope to rival China. I think that was their problem. And they tried to put us down. I think that was it. And here I will invite your reference to a couple of articles written by probably their best expert on South Asia in the Chinese Institutes of Contemporary International Relations, which is the think tank of their Ministry of State Security, which is their foreign intelligence arm. And he said, in fact, that from the time of the two countries getting independence, a military showdown was inevitable. So that was the first point he made. And the second He said the real issue is not the border, and I'm virtually paraphrasing him, is not the border, but it is the contention for dominance in the region and among their neighbors. So I think that is a very bold and explicit statement about this, the way they look at things.
So taking advantage of COVID, I think, was also one of the reasons, perhaps, because everybody was distracted at that point in time. But General Rakesh Sharma, coming to you, on the military aspects of it, Eastern Ladakh especially was not such a heavily deployed or heavily guarded frontier as far as Indian Army was concerned or Indian military was concerned. But now looking back in 4 years, like Mr. Ranade said about the counter build-up, rapid counter build-up, how do you look at these 4 years? What has emerged as military lessons and what Indian military has been able to do in these last 4 years?
Thank you, Nathan. First, I would say that I agree on this issue of putting us under geostrategic pressure, and this has been greatly achieved. What the Chinese did in 2020 must not be taken as only Eastern Ladakh. All along 3,488 kilometers, he's put us under tremendous amount of pressure, and subsequent all that infrastructure build-up and the force level that have been brought to bear, this geostrategic pressure is in perpetuity. So that's one, and it ties us singularly down because of the total lack of trust that is now existing. Second issue I feel is that there was an attempt to make the border benign to his advantage. He talks about sovereignty by creating so-called, now instead of line of actual control, a belt of actual control with his buffers around there. He has made a benign border. It suits him tremendously. While we are in pressure, but the border is benign, and China can focus towards his dreams and his rejuvenation and whatever cliches they want to use over a period of time. So I think if you take it in this manner, Chinese have achieved a significant amount of thing, and I agree with this issue of disallowing us to reach our potential. Now, have we responded back? Yes, we responded back to the best possible. While it is possible that tomorrow or day after or 10 years later a war might break out, but without the war, we have assured ourselves and the Chinese that to make another infringement into the border, they'll have to fight it out. It is not possible hereafter, which was possible, like you said, before 2020, for him to come and sit out at Barahutti or Shipkila or any one of these places. But thank you, President Xi, for waking us up and making sure that hereafter we have assured. And it's not 2020 and Yangtze alone. There have been many other probes which have not come into limelight media, rightly so. Everything is not into the fore. So we have now assured him that, okay, this is it and finished. You want to take more territory, you can rename 62 places, another 62 places, it doesn't make a difference. In this century, nobody can take Arunachal Pradesh from us. But having said that, not even on the border can you do it without fighting a war. That, I think, assurance has been given in the posture that we have adopted.
So I think he wanted to win without fighting, the Chinese. Do you agree, Srikanth, that President Xi may have made this tactical mistake, and in doing that, he's lost India strategically? Because all this while, from say 1993 onwards, or let's say from the beginning of this century till 2020, the Chinese had a free run in the Indian market, Indian relationship with India. But now suddenly all the focus which used to be obsessively with on Pakistan, India's focus, strategic focus, has shifted to China. And the population in India is actually now more aware of the Chinese designs or Chinese, I would say, animosity towards India or its designs towards India. Would you agree?
Well, when Xi Jinping took over power in 2012, he made a comment to the PTI correspondent about 5 objectives that they have towards India. Basically, these are dialogues, strategic trust, stability in relations, and cultural and people-to-people contacts, and so on and so forth. But there was no specific comments in relation to the territorial dispute resolution. On the other hand, he also suggested core interests are more important than developmental interests. When Xi Jinping came to Delhi in September 2014, The whole bilateral relations have been changed from strategic and cooperative partnership to developmental partnership, so which included elements of economy, manufacturing centers, trade, investments, and things like these. So Galwan basically disrupts that equation in terms of the projection towards a more Chinese, forward momentum in terms of economic developmental focus. So there is an element of surprise here in terms of Galwan, but I agree with the suggestion that this is teaching a lesson to India in terms of what it has been doing. Specifically, US-India relations have been identified by the Chinese interlocutors as a kind of punishment that they are not listening to China in relation to the foreign policy. And generally, strategic autonomy or independent foreign policy is seen as more anti-US rather than an anti-China posturing since 1950s. And there was this surprise element that we were also insisting on a strategic autonomy from Beijing. So that resulted in the tension in the Galwan as a run-up to that. But in terms of the what did they achieve out of this? There is, of course, a four-front war for China: Taiwan, South China Sea, Senkaku Islands, and then Galwan. So they are kind of stressed out in all directions. And this is a problem for China to resolve. I don't think they are in a comfortable position in this four-front kind of confrontation. And also the failure of India to mobilize all those four fronts, Japan, Vietnam, Philippines, and other like-minded parties to come together and address the China question. I think this is where diplomacy would have played a bigger role. We should have mobilized or at least learned lessons from the territorial disputes that China has with Japan, with Vietnam, Philippines, and others, and form a kind of coalition of the willing in this front. I think on that front we have been wanting on that, although recently we improved relations with Philippines, Vietnam, of course, but also to get the support of Japan, Australia, US, and other parties on Galwan incident. The State Department was not really forthcoming on the Galwan issue, although they have the resolution in the House about Arunachal Pradesh, but not about the western sector. We also have not been able to mobilize the Japanese, who have a territorial dispute with China, and we could have exchanged notes on the Senkaku Islands, how they are dealing with this, and how we can really benefit out of a joint action. If not a joint action, at least studying each other's responses and learning from the operations. I'm saying this because there are 680 transgressions on Senkaku Islands by the Chinese Coast Guard and the Air Force, while there are about 380 and 400 roughly transgressions on the India front. So actually there is intensive pressure on Senkaku Islands rather than...
More than India's pressure.
So from that point of view, I think we could have mobilized our energies in this kind of coalition, which would have really tested the Chinese on all fronts, and we could have exerted more pressure. Also, the lessons learned was, of course, we have an arms stalemate right now on the borders, and it is good that we have mobilized forces and tested in all scenarios on how do we address in the future these scenarios. So I think we learned some practical lessons in mobilization, in exercises that we conducted, Air Force and Army, and of course also the Navy in Indian Ocean by exerting pressure on the Chinese in terms of the sea lanes of communications. So I think some good lessons learned from Galwan, and I think it is actually good for us from the military preparatory stage as well as the diplomatic preparation.
That's very comprehensive. But Surya, you had a question.
Yeah,
too.
I mean, before I come to Sriparna, you said that the Chinese are upset because we are not listening to them. There is an element of arrogance here, isn't it? That we should be listening to them.
Yes, Xi Jinping made a statement in Sika Summit meeting in May 2014. Before he came to Delhi, he made a statement in the Sika Summit meeting in which he indirectly suggested that Asian countries should listen to China instead of the United States. So from then on, there is the fatwa that Asian countries should not extend their support or their seeking help from the United States as a conflict resolution point of view. So that is the red line that Xi Jinping insisted on. And we were crossing this with the foundational agreements, the Lemova, Sismova, Beka, and others. Also, we were approaching the Russians, we were approaching the Europeans. We also intensified our relations with Japan, both in economy as well as in 4 fronts with Japan on outer space program, BMD system, socio-economic and technological aspects. Also in terms of maritime, the Coast Guard and the Malabar exercises that have been intensified. So we were doing the opposite of what the Chinese were actually asking for in 2014. So I think this was what we were testing, and probably we'll have to face Galwan probably even before, if not in 2020.
Sriparna, the Chinese economy, we've heard a lot about bad news about it. So is that really going down? What is the state of the economy? And what would be their priority, economy or Taiwan?
It's a very interesting question. For this quarter, their National Bureau of Statistics said that their economy has grown by 5.3%, and it's fantastic. It is above 5.2%. However, the Rhodium Group has estimated that the Chinese economy grew only by 1.5%. Now, why this statistic given out by the National Bureau of Statistics is a bit laughable and not trustworthy is because they themselves had reported last month that their own exports and imports declined by 7.5% and by 1.9% respectively. So if your exports and imports have declined, how exactly is your growth rate at 5.4%? So that's the laughable and the weird bit. So Rhodium Group's statistics are more trustworthy, of course. The jobless rate hit 15.3% last month in China for people aged between 16 and 24. Last year, their Ministry of Labour even said that they are no longer going to publish statistics of unemployment. It is really that bad. In February, local government debt totaled $13 trillion, and nearly 3 dozen real estate companies have defaulted on the bonds. Foreign investment flows into China have shrunk by 19.9% as of January this year. There's bad foreign trade as well, because shipments declined 7.5% year on year in dollar terms, which reversed the 7.1% gain which they had in the first 1 month of 2024. So it's not a very great situation for China, which is why you constantly see that they are coming up with whatever meetings that they have at the Politburo level, or even at the 20th Party Congress. They have been constantly talking about revitalizing the economy, or approaching the China dream. How exactly is it going to happen? Unless there's a big scale stimulus, how is that going to happen? But then how does China come up with the big scale stimulus, because it has also to focus on Taiwan? So a lot of questions keep coming up that would Taiwan be attacked in the same sort of way as Ukraine was attacked? There's one reason as to why that has not happened, in my opinion, and that's because the economy is crashing. Now, China's power has been built on its economic rise. Unless it can stabilize that, and unless it can get back to that sort of a growth rate as it had earlier, it's a bit difficult. Of course, that does not mean that it will never want to take back Taiwan. Xi Jinping has made these statements very clearly in all his speeches, starting from the 19th Party Congress speech. But the time is not ripe at the moment. So Taiwan, as I see it, is not going to happen immediately. Definitely not in 2024.
That's interesting. But taking off from there, Srikanth spoke about the Chinese veto on the Asian nations. and of course our failure to mobilize Japan and Philippines and Vietnam and even the US not getting the wholehearted support or sort of coming in our support during after Galwan. Is that the reason, would you think, that India also is very wary of the Quad in military terms? Although all the other three members keep on talking about Quad should be one also a military coalition if possible, do more on the military front. Are we sort of keeping ourselves away from that aspect of Quad just so that we can have a bilateral, I won't say agreement, but bilateral discussion with China on the disputes that we have? Do you think that? And second, what about US-India closeness, which China always objects to? Like he said, you've said it earlier. What is the situation there now, that triangle? Because we are also not exactly right now in good relations with the US if we go by what's happening at the moment. So where do you see these two things?
Nitin, you've covered a lot of ground here,
Yes.
but let me also address 2 points that were raised.
Right.
One, I think it was probably a slip of the tongue when you spoke about Xi Jinping having made a tactical error by doing what he did in April 2020.
Yeah.
I call it a strategic miscalculation.
Okay.
In the sense that what he has done is he has firstly destroyed any trust that existed between us and them.
True.
That is the first point.
True.
Second, China is still an export-led economy despite their best efforts.
Sure.
And it is looking for markets. There has been a 20% drop in exports to the United States and to Europe
Yes.
independently.
Right.
China is hurting very badly. They are looking for a market, and we are the largest untapped virgin market in the world.
Right. Which they should have actually tapped.
Which they should have tapped. Now they're not going to be able to tap. In fact, which, if I may just digress a bit, I'm surprised at reading in the Indian newspapers a couple of days ago about Chinese EVs
Right.
making an entry here and joining up with an Indian partner.
Yeah.
Why should government even entertain this when our own companies are already manufacturing EVs?
Absolutely.
I think, such things, surreptitious entry into the Indian market must be blocked.
Right.
I believe the normal practice is we don't mention names, so I'm not going to do it. But there are cases like that. The second thing is what, and which addresses your point, is what Surya also raised
Alluded to, yeah.
about the Chinese arrogance.
Right.
Here, in fact, if I may take you back to 1945,
Okay.
when Mao was around, he wrote a essay on coalitions, where he said that China will look after the security of Asia. While Pandit Nehru, our Prime Minister, subsequently was still talking about sharing,
responsibility.
sharing responsibilities. So, we were on a different page altogether. And I suspect that we are making the same mistake now that we can make up. I understand the imperatives of our not wanting to fight a war which will be very costly in economic terms.
Sure.
But I think here I tend to agree with what Srikanth said, at least to some extent, that we should be probably more forward-leaning in our relationships and in our arrangements with the Quad countries and with others.
Okay.
It doesn't mean picking a fight, but it certainly means taking a leaf out of Vietnam's book and saying that we can play, a hot game as well as a long-term game. And I think that's what we need to do.
Sure.
We have signed various enabling agreements with the United States, which will automatically put the pressure on the Chinese. We are building up Andamans, etc.
Yes.
I think I'm not expecting that anyone is going to come and fight on our borders, but there's a lot other things that can happen. And I think we need to, build up that segment. But I think coming to your point, I think as far as China is concerned, I think their economic situation is pretty bad. The provincial governments in China have lost over 30% of their revenues because of the real estate crisis.
Crash, yeah.
They have cut salaries of 30% by 30% of their employees. So you can imagine the amount of hurt that's going on there.
Sure.
And Xi Jinping is coming under increasing pressure, which means that if he feels a bit destabilized, then he could be capable of undertaking a rash action. I look at it from the point of view that with Japan, well, Japan has the American umbrella, so he'll think twice. So does the Philippines.
And so does Taiwan.
So does Taiwan, but that leaves us. So I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but I think we need to be prepared. And I at least feel that we are so far following the right policy, but we need to move much faster on denying China access to the Indian market in many ways.
Right.
Let me just throw in one figure. You can see our trade deficit burgeoning literally.
Yes.
Post Galwan, it's gone up, I think, twofold or almost threefold. And what is it because of? Because our traders go there and buy umbrellas, lampshades, etc. Why can't we manufacture it here and give employment to our own people?
Right.
So I think these are the issues that we need to address.
It has to be a comprehensive policy against China, not just military or diplomatic, but also on trade in terms of other relations, other aspects of the relations.
That is where Xi Jinping will realize the strategic error that he's made.
Yeah, so when I was saying that I'll take a break, but before that I just wanted to clarify. When I said tactical mistake of that military operation, which cost him strategically, is what I wanted to actually convey. But I need to take a break here. We'll come back quickly, but don't go away. We are in a very fascinating conversation on India-China relations and of course the 4 years of the standoff on Eastern Ladakh. Welcome back. We are in a special discussion with China specialists and experts on where is the India-China relationship right now, 4 years after the standoff began in Eastern Ladakh, and of course all other tension points between the two countries. General Sharma, let me come to you on this now. The military stalemate that you spoke about, and of course the rapid mobilization on the border. But this effort to have a benign border, which you talked about, would be to the Chinese advantage, is what you're saying, because our infrastructure, although rapidly built up over the last 10 years, I would say, and especially in the last 5 years, is not yet adequate. So what are the steps Indian military and the Indian government must start taking in this?
So when one studies the so-called 59 line, as to Jawaharlal never came and saw the 59 line on ground. Some Fauji may have come and seen it.
Right.
Why did they make the line here? Why didn't they go 10 kilometers further, take DB also inside?
Right.
It was an arbitrary line. There was no logic to it. There's no rationale to it. And then you study in where all these things have been happening over a period of time, where all it happened. Galwan is one small world, but what happened on this 826 kilometers of Eastern Ladakh?
Yes.
I can say that they are wanting to occupy the edge, the forward edge of the line of mountains there, which is the watershed there, which means the Shyok watershed, Shyok River watershed.
Yes.
So Shyok River watershed. Now I take all the 6 places that you talk about in excitation.
Right.
That Shyok watershed is what he's occupied, right up to Hot Spring, the areas of Hot Spring.
Right.
So each one of these areas, he has come to Y Junction and Depsang, but he didn't venture down towards Bottleneck or come down, turn the Bottleneck and come there. Because that's the last place on the mountain range. Then hereafter is following down.
Right.
And if you say all the other places similarly done, or Anila Kula or whatever you can make it.
Yes.
Even Chardingla, Temchok, it is not Siren Junction, that's a point. The point is that we used to patrol to Chardingla Pass. Now he doesn't want to allow us to go to Chardingla Pass, which is the high point. So one place he's created a belt along the on the edge of the mountain range, but the other places we are holding.
Right.
Maybe in Sikkim,
Yes.
maybe in central sector, and also in McMahon line.
Yeah.
Now, if we are holding it, and all the while he's prodding there, it is to deny him what's happened in Eastern Ladakh. I won't say it's a fait accompli. Something will happen in times to come, but other areas we are actually sitting as far forward as possible to deny the watershed. He's probing us. Yangtze is a watershed.
Absolutely.
He wants to push us back
Correct.
so that he comes and occupies the watershed. Similarly, Indus watershed. Now, have we done some work? Look, Nitin, you and me have been around in this area for so long. I recently heard that 121 kilometers of metal road from Trishul to Demchok will be ready this year.
Yeah.
Metal road.
Absolutely.
It goes all along the Indus Valley, 75 kilometers of Indus Valley from Dungti down south.
That's right.
Chinese have now brought dumpers seeing us to connect the road to Dumchele. They are following us behind.
Yes.
They didn't have it earlier,
No.
but this one is come on later. But our road, the metal road along the Indus River is through.
That Phukche road.
Phukche road.
Yeah.
Phukche, Dumchele.
That's right.
Dumchele had a bad name earlier for some kind of trade that used to go around there.
True.
But the road is through Demchok.
Yeah.
It means that we mean business and all this last 2 years.
Yes.
Similarly, the Sasedla road. Now we have been on the glacier.
Absolutely.
In my time, the bridge on Shok River went away.
Used to get washed away.
Yeah, no. But now they made a permanent bridge across.
Right.
And the bridge, there was permafrost. They've broken the permafrost down Sasedla, down to Sasalbrangza, and the roads are now connecting to. I think the aim of my saying is that there is a focused work on. There is a desire to do so, and it's not been done in a manner that we used to do it earlier. Jisme, you can get people from planes who are breaking stones and making roads.
By hand, yeah.
This is modernity coming here.
Right.
It's not those box type culverts being made which were prehistoric. Now things have changed and modernity is coming.
Sure.
And I think Mr. Parikar, if you recollect,
Yes.
made a tremendous shift to border roads.
From MORTH, the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, to MOD.
2016.
That's right.
That made a transformatory thing. So
Absolutely.
we started thinking it's our baby and so, and all the other roads, Sela Pass,
Yeah.
if
exactly.
this road comes through from Shinkula, which is
Yes.
Shingola,
The tunnel, yeah.
we'll have a 24 hour into 7 whole year road which passes through Atal Tunnel, through Shingula, down to Padam Valley, along Zanskar, and you're in the transformation is done. So I think one part it is.
Right.
And the border is secure. But I think we need to little work it on. If I take what Iran did recently, 330 odd weaponry that they threw it.
Right.
They were drones, they were, you name it, they were
Yes,
ballistic
projectiles,
missiles,
different
cruise
projectiles,
missiles,
yeah.
all flying at different speeds
Right.
over 3-4 countries, but
Right.
all landing together in Israel.
That's right.
And Israel required 4 countries' help to actually down these 330.
Absolutely.
It is a transformation. And what did the Iranians learn from? They learned it from what the Russians are doing against Ukraine.
Correct.
Their packages are coming like
Absolutely.
that. And there is no aircraft flying. It's long-range artillery.
Unmanned is the way forward. Yeah.
You know? And standoff, BVR
Right.
range.
Stand up, yes.
We need to start thinking of this modernity of warfare where it doesn't turn across that wars are messy affairs. You can't predict victory can't be defined. You can't even define what is victory.
No.
So we have to now start planning a different kind of stuff that can be thrown. Because you read, Diplomat carried an article recently on all the Chinese media talking about Ukrainians learning from Ukraine and from Gaza.
Right.
We need to say what are they learning and they're
Yes.
publishing.
Absolutely.
We need to get aware and start thinking that there may be something else coming other than the border.
Yeah, just the troops, boots on the ground may not be the way
So
forward. Yeah.
if he doesn't do the border because he knows, he can't accept attrition, the social contract.
Right.
Can he carry 1,000 bodies back home? His public will say, what the hell, PLA is all PLA, the Communist Party. Yeah? There's no
Right.
PLA taking for
Correct.
the people. Yeah?
Exactly.
If
Yeah.
the bodies go back home, it will be troublesome for Chinese. They have not declared their casualties in Vietnam or in Korea in 62 sometime
Later
later.
they declared, much later,
Much
50 years later. Yeah.
We need to plan on Chinese weaknesses and not on his strengths.
Okay.
That would be the logic.
Key point, absolutely.
Yeah. So we, if they have strength somewhere else, they have 3 roads in Aksaichen.
Right.
It's not G219.
No.
There is G216, G695.
691.
3 roads coming from the same parallel. 695 is right next to us.
And now Shaksham Valley, they're talking
Suction
about.
Valley, I think, we could trouble them on the uranium that they're taking out opposite Saltoro range.
Absolutely.
If we can see to Saltoro range,
Because we
they
are there
start
for
throwing
such a
some
long
stones
time.
from there.
Yeah, exactly.
If they're digging out uranium from Ginzer province of Baltistan, we need to do some work.
Absolutely.
I think we have to change our tack to many fronts other than the border alone.
Yes, I think both of you have said this. So Surya, your turn.
Yeah, Srikanth, I want to turn to the US-China relationship. Has that ship sailed? I mean, is it now permanently, off?
At the Filoli meeting in last year between Biden and Xi Jinping, two things were significant. One is that when somebody asked Xi Jinping about Taiwan invasion scenario, he feigned ignorance about the whole invasion scenario, which meant that while not giving up the invasion scenario, they were mindful of the Taiwan Relations Act and its potential to support Taiwan in arms or in other domains. So that was one significant, I think, outcome of the Filoli meeting in San Francisco. The second one is speaking to the US Congress delegation, which visited China in September. Xi Jinping said that we do not question the US hegemony. Previously, since the 19th Communist Party Congress, they have been mentioning about occupying the center stage, that is, China wanting to be the global hegemon and regional hegemon. So today now they do not want to question the US hegemony. Whether that is rhetorical aspect or whether it is real, we do not know. But what is important is that there is a climb down from the 2017 position to that of the 2023 November position in San Francisco. So these two significant things would mean that, and this is because as Sriparna mentioned, there is a growth rate decline in China. And everything is dependent on growth rates. The Tiananmen Square protests, the Chinese Communist Party's promise is we will maintain economic growth rates and don't ask for democracy, don't ask for corruption issues, and so on and so forth. So in other words, today the growth rates are falling, and with the Trump tariff wars, Biden semiconductor ban, there is a huge stress on the Chinese economy, which needs to be addressed by having relations restored with the United States, which was spoiled in a way during the late Trump, tariff wars and subsequent events, or a range of issues: Taiwan Strait, South China Sea, Senkaku Islands, and also the balloon incident, so there is a climb down by China vis-a-vis the United States last year, and possibly this will continue for some time till the economic growth rates are picking up. If that picks up, then I think the Chinese would go into the mold of again questioning the US hegemony and building up the coalitions, etc. So relatively, if you see the BRI third summit investments have relatively declined compared with the previous $956 billion investment. The third summit declared about $90 billion of fresh investments, and that too in green projects and that too in other aspects. So when you look at the questioning of the US hegemony, we see Chinese are not really egging on the US since November last year. But this may change over a period of time depending on the growth rates and a host of other things. They are concerned about the economic growth rates right now, and economic growth rates are controlled by the United States in a large way, because they are the ones who are pumping in technology. They are the ones who are pumping in Taiwan stability or otherwise. They are the ones who have pushed many multinational corporations into China. 77,000 American companies in China, 83,000 Japanese companies in China, and nearly 70,000 European companies in China. This is what has created China rise, and all of this is controlled by the United States. Shanghai Stock Exchange lost $6 trillion last year. And this is traced to the American actions, actually, in terms of controlling China's rise. So that is a crucial barometer.
And the decoupling has only begun, barely begun actually.
Yes, decoupling and the European idea of systemic rivalry, I think these are putting pressure on China in a large measure. But the climb down in Filoli meeting is, I think, probably will also decide about the intensity of decoupling. Americans also have a sense of compromise with China because they are also subsidizing the American economy by Walmart, by all sorts of products.
So both are locked
Yeah.
in a thing, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Sriparna, the reports about the appointment of a Chinese ambassador to India, does this suggest something on the part of the Chinese to, build up or normalize ties with us?
So there are two things here. When you don't send an ambassador for this long, almost close to 2 years, either a particular country trusts the other one so much that level of trust is of course not there between India and China, or the other is that the country is just not important at all. Now, China, what it does is that it uses a mix of placating us and deceiving us from time to time. And its own ambassadors and its own, people in the higher ups and its bureaucracy often do that. Wang Yi also had visited, only after the Russia-Ukraine war, despite the fact that, Galwan had been going on for a very long time. That was to create this impression that India, China, and Russia are together against the Western world, and so on. So they use that sort of a deception. When I do talk of deception, the existing, charged affairs, Mahachia's articles become very important. While our EAM, Dr. Jayashankar, has been constantly saying that the relationship cannot go back to normal unless Chinese move back to the pre-2020 position, Mahachia has been constantly writing these articles and making these speeches in India saying that, we are Asian brothers and we have great bonhomie and Buddhists and so on. All those sorts of nice things which are important, but not as important as India's sovereignty. So, but it's used to deceive us. Now, why is it at this juncture China wants to send in Xu Fei home? They want to send him in because the Blinken visit did not yield anything positive first. Secondly, Xi Jinping is in Europe right now. He did meet Macron and there were lots of nice talks, but nothing positive out of it. Again, it went back to let's not have Cold War mentality, etc. So nothing positive is really coming out of it. So now that Indian economy is growing and is the only bright spot in the very gloomy global economy, because last quarter our growth percentage was close to 8%, which any other country in the world does not have. So which is why the world is looking towards India for investments, for market and so on. So China is thinking, why not? Let's also do it. So who is going to do it? Machia's term is ending. They could have sent in another charge d'affaires, but they want to send in someone higher up because now the Indian market needs to be used. Now India's positive growth momentum needs to be used. So, which is why a lot of this placating will continue. It's going to be the same old wine, just that in a new bottle. And it's going to go on and on and on till, India doesn't start also reciprocating, which we often do. When there's a good gesture from any other country, India often reciprocates. We've done that with China as well. So the hope is that if we can send in an ambassador, if we can send in someone like really higher than, the charge d'affaires, it looks good. So, those optics have to be maintained. And if China can exploit certain benefits out of India, sure, why not? Because, as we've been discussing, China's economy is not doing great right now. So it's just going to be the same old stinky wine in a new bottle.
And the fact that he's not an India hand is not really
It's not
relevant.
it's just to showcase that, let's start afresh. He doesn't know anything. Oh, this is a new epoch of history. Let's start all over. That sort of an approach is there.
No baggage. Yes. No, I was going to come to you only. So, of course, you want to respond to that.
Not respond.
Or
I just
at
want to
least,
interject.
interject. And once we do that, I'm going to come to all of you for your final remarks on what we are discussing. But go ahead.
No, I agree with what she said. I just have one point, which is the Chinese ambassador here left in the normal course after his term
Ended, yeah.
on promotion, Sun Wedo. They, for whatever reason, you can call it bureaucratic reasons, you can say that, India is not that high up in their ladder. So now they have posted another ambassador here. Maybe they couldn't find a job for him anywhere else, whatever it is. So he's come here. I think we shouldn't read anything into it. Not only read something, read nothing into it. It's a bureaucratic matter. They posted an ambassador here. Had they replaced only the CDA, then yes, there would have been a message. But they posted an ambassador. It's a routine thing. It doesn't mean any change of policy. And if there is a change, it will come only from one man. He's the guy at the top, Xi Jinping.
So let me, final comments from all of you. What next for each one of you?
I
Starting
think
with
more
you.
of the same.
Okay.
I don't see tensions easing. It depends on how much, we are able to counter the Chinese if we are willing to take some assertive steps. It need not be on the ground, on the front. It could be other ways. And secondly, I think one factor that we haven't addressed here, except tangentially, is the US-China relationship.
Right.
I don't view it that benignly. I think it's heading downhill.
Right.
Blinken's visit was very clear that
Yeah,
it's
of course.
going even down. And I frankly think that Blinken delivered some warnings. France hasn't responded to Xi Jinping's trip. So I think, in fact, if things don't change, I'm anticipating a clash within the next 2 to 3 years on the high seas between the US and China.
So a note of caution. Also, a border clash between India and China.
Possible. It's possible. In fact, you might not have a large scale thing, but small things may happen. And I think what General Sharma said, that we are well prepared now. So if they do something, they're not going to gain anything. They'll probably land up with a few bloody noses. But I only hope that we take that as an excuse and do something somewhere else.
Right. General Sharma, your comments.
So, Nitin, I have 2 points to make. One is that larger number of people, especially in the strategic circles now, talk about weaknesses in China, the economic weaknesses which they obviously have, and their pressures that have been brought internally within Chinese, so many kind of riots taking place, etc. The soldier is weak, he's conscripted, he's ill-trained. All this noise has been made, and their equipment with Pakistanis got rejected, and equipment from somebody else got rejected. So people start counting on the negatives of the Chinese armed forces and the Chinese internal state to say that we are gung-ho. I think that will be a wrong thing to say. We should be gung-ho on all this. If something weaknesses come up, whenever something happens with Chinese on the border, well, that should be taken as a bonus. It should not be taken as preconceived ideas that the economy is weak and the soldier is weak and their one-child norm. And you name everything which people say. Those are not relevant when we prepare for an adversary of that kind.
Right.
One point. And the second point I want to make is that there is an anxiety in many of us who are students around of South Asia, of the Chinese ingress into South Asia. And I think we need to take it seriously. Look, this Deputy Prime Minister of Nepal went recently, 10 days ago, Shrestha. He signed an agreement there for making 14 roads that come down to Tarai. We had a delegation at the time we were discussing. In Tarai alone, there are a large number of Chinese businesses being established there. Tarai means in the Bihar border and UP border.
Right.
We went recently, Mr. Ranade and self, to a seminar in Siliguri. There's an officer, a CEO, who got up and said, what happens to the road that's been made right next to the Darjeeling border? There's a CEO who got up and said there are 2 roads which come right down to Japa by the Chinese, and they're way down already. So there is work out there in Bangladesh. There is BNS Sheikh Hasina, which was inaugurated last year. It's got bay for 6 submarines. So Bangladesh doesn't have 6 submarines. They have 2 Ming class old ones and 6 frigates. Bangladesh is doing a major exercise with the Chinese nowadays, on the high seas. Myanmar, God knows what's going to happen tomorrow. With Sri Lanka, they have relationship. I think, and Pakistan, of course, pocket borrow.
Yes, it's one of their provinces now.
Maybe another 2 months we'll hear that there is a treaty signed between Bhutan and China, which we will not come to know about.
Right.
So all this is a threat around here.
Absolutely.
I think we need to take caution into what Chinese inroads are coming into this area. There is a Tista project which in Bangladesh, which the Chinese have got making. And then there is a friendship bridges, some kind of treaty with there, a whole lot of bridges being made. Padma Bridge was made, which the Europeans rejected, can't be built. But the Chinese made the Padma Bridge $2 billion in 2 years. The fact is that the inroads in South Asia are actually tremendous, and we need to take care of this issue on this here. Our neighborhood first has to be actually with a gusto neighborhood first when the next
And
government
not just lip service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Srikanth?
I think the last 4 years have been a washout in India-China relations. Very unfortunate because there is no normal kind of interaction. We used to have about 30 engagement processes, youth exchange, strategic dialogue between foreign ministries, strategic and economic dialogue between the Niti Aayog and NDRC. We used to have defense dialogue, annual defense dialogue. We used to have steel dialogue, financial dialogue. I mean, you name it. So about 30 of these all have been shut down because of the Galwan incident. And so that is a kind of washout in the last 4 years. What is the way out? I do not see, unless until, as Dr. Jaishankar mentioned, peace and tranquility prevails on the border. We do not have the bilateral, except the trade and other things which are done by non-state actors,
Right.
not by the state actors. State can promote or put restrictions, but not, kind of limit the trade related. However, I see a plan B, Prime Minister's speech to the Newsweek
Yes.
about the India-China relations. So it must be a very studied, response in terms of what we should do in Modi 3.0 tenure. And possibly we would have Wang Yi coming to India somewhere in July or August, as Wang Yi came in May 2014, met with Sushma Swaraj, and he mentioned about, he was a special envoy of Xi Jinping at the time. And likewise, when the new government forms, he probably will come again as a special envoy and propose a few ABCD. But I do not see the Galwan thing has been getting resolved. So which then means we go back to Dr. Jaishankar's position on peace and tranquility as necessary for the bilateral relations improvement. So what I see is Xi Jinping climbing down for economic and other related, which he had already made in Delhi in September 2014. That is, we will invest $20 billion for a manufacturing center in Pune and in Ahmedabad. So those are likely to be made once again, but we need to be kind of guarded in terms of our response, because it is not just about a manufacturing center being established or some trade, some investment to be made. It is about also where we started in 2020. On June 15th, when we lost those 20 Indian soldiers. That is what has changed the bilateral relations. And so I hope the government of India response would be taking into consideration all that 4 years path that we have traveled through.
That's great. Sriparna, last word to you.
Sure. So as we all have discussed, the war is not just going to be on the borders, and we need to be prepared on all the fronts. A couple of things. We've been very proactive with regards to the northern sector, with regards to Kashmir. That sort of an attention hasn't been given in Northeast India. Even within Northeast India, there are still a lot of states, the boundaries of which are not yet delineated. So China is going to use that as a pressure point, and it's going to fuel disinformation and try to influence civilian populations to further foment unrest within India. That's one way. Second is it's going to weaponize water. In 2017 also it had done that, and Assam saw some of the worst floods in history because they simply did not share water data with us, despite the fact that we paid them for it. They just said, we don't know how much water was flowing in the Yarlung Sangpo because weather monitoring systems failed. So there's going to be more of weaponization of water. We need to be prepared. Third, even inside the states of Northeast India, there are a lot of places which we ourselves have not named yet. So China will come in and name all of those. One example is Bhalukpong, which is on Assam, Arunachal Pradesh border. There are a lot of geographical terrains which we have not named. If it's ours, why aren't we naming it? these sorts of things are going to happen. Fourth, terrorism. Paresh Barwa of the Alpha is sitting in Yunnan. We need to prepare. It will use all sorts of traditional and non-traditional warfare against India and new forms of warfare, including cyber warfare. So we need to be prepared for all of this. We need to remember our lessons and prepare, because what we need to remember is that China's actions speak louder than words. It's spoken, I think, through its words, 62, 67, 87, Doklam, Galwan, Yangtze Valley. I think we've had enough. We need to start remembering and preparing.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end this conversation. We can go on and on about India-China relations and where they are right now and where they're going in the future, but the time is always finite in such kind of discussions. But thank you all very much. Don't go away. We'll have more programs like this. And of course, you know where to reach us. Our social media handles are visible to you on the screen. Do keep sending your feedback. Your comments are always welcome and very precious to us for improving our programs and of course making new programs out of the suggestions that you give. For the time being, it's goodbye.